another episode of Access-Ability. It's a show on YouTube where I talk about the video game industry, accessibility, and representation. Basically, how can we help more people to play games, and more people to see themselves in the games they play? Developer Supermassive Games, best known for creating choose-your-own-adventure horror fiction games like Until Dawn, have over the last couple of years been creating a series of shorter horror games called the Dark Pictures Anthology. Each game in this series explores a different genre and tone of horror, from Man of Medan, which is about exploring a spooky ship and oh, is it haunted, or Little Hope, which released last year, and is about a bunch of people who were on a school trip and end up, oh no, it's a witch trials town, is there something spooky happening? Basically, Supermassive like to make choose-your-own-adventure horror. Releasing at some point later this year, House of Ashes is the next game in the Dark Pictures anthology and is set in 2003 Iraq and has a playable cast of 80% characters who are from the US military and one character who is an Iraqi soldier who all fall underground into a Mesopotamian temple where creepy monsters are. So today, on Access-Ability, we're going to be talking about some of the changes being made to the Dark Pictures anthology House of Ashes compared to previous games from Supermassive. We're going to talk about some of the accessibility improvements that are being made, some changes which might be a detriment to accessibility, which console is probably going to be most accessible to play on, and some concerns I'm cautiously watching for given the game's subject material. I'm going to start today's video by giving a little context on the accessibility pros and cons of some past Supermassive games, to better contrast what is new and different when we get to House of Ashes. All of Supermassive's past interactive horror games, dating back to Until Dawn, rely on a degree of fast reactions, fast decision making, and repetitive button inputs as standard. While you can explore environments and find clues, most of the gameplay boils down to responding to QuickTime event prompts and making decisions under time pressure. Until Dawn featured one minigame, not present in the Dark Pictures anthology, where players had to hold their controller perfectly still to not alert monsters to their presence. This was an accessibility barrier to players with motor control disabilities, and has not returned in later Supermassive games. Both Man of Medan and Little Hope feature options for players to turn off timers on QuickTime event prompts, so that they have as long as they need to hit the correct button. But this has always been an on-off accessibility toggle. You're either timed, or you're not, with no options to extend the time limit but keep it in place. Players can also turn button mashing segments into button holds, and limit QuickTime events so that they'll only ever ask the player to press the same single button whenever a prompt comes up, which are both useful features, but very all or nothing. Alongside that, the games feature a variety of subtitle customization options, including the option to switch to a dyslexia-friendly font, though only one is offered, which means it will not be useful to every dyslexic player out there. While Until Dawn was a PlayStation exclusive game, the Dark Pictures anthology games are all multi-platform releases, which open up a couple of different accessibility options to players. Perhaps most importantly, being able to play on Xbox consoles allows players who struggle with certain aspects of gameplay, such as button mashing, the option to make use of co-pilot mode, an Xbox feature where two controllers can be registered as one by the console. This allows for two people to play through the games together, with one person taking over any gameplay elements that the disabled player may struggle to engage with. With that groundwork set, let's talk about House of Ashes specifically, and what changes are being made to that game compared to previous entries. Some of them are definitely going to be positive to disabled players, but there's at least a couple that I think might cause some problems for people who might have been able to play the last two Dark Pictures games just fine. House of Ashes takes place in 2003 Iraq and features a cast of 5 playable characters, 4 of whom are US military and 1 of whom is an Iraqi soldier. The US thinks there are weapons of mass destruction in a big underground complex, an earthquake causes all the characters to fall down into an underground Mesopotamian temple, and everyone has to survive an attack from monsters. It's apparently heavily inspired by movies like Alien, Predator, The Descent, and, unfortunately for those of us who know about Lovecraft's background, The Mountains of Madness. Just so everyone's on the same page here, there were never any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. That just was not a thing, but that sure didn't stop the US assuming there were, so searching for weapons of mass destruction and not finding any is at least historically accurate, I guess. In terms of accessibility changes, let's start off with the positive ones. Where previous Dark Pictures anthology titles allowed players to turn off timers for QuickTime events, House of Ashes features 3 difficulty settings, allowing for some customization of QuickTime event difficulty, rather than only offering the option to turn timers off entirely. Easy mode will give players more time to mash buttons and hit prompts. Normal is the original difficulty, and No Holds Barred exists for people with lightning reflexes who want more of a challenge. By offering an option to make QuickTime events more forgiving, without turning them off completely, House of Ashes should offer players greater control over the level of challenge that's right for them. Not every disabled player needs timings turned off entirely, and this should help those players to still have some degree of challenge, but not the level that they couldn't compete with. House of Ashes also features a dedicated flashlight button, which lights up environments pretty well, at the expense of some maneuverability. While this is designed for finding secrets, anything that allows for targeted increased brightness in a visually dark horror game should help make it more playable for players with eyesight difficulties. However, on the less accessible end of the spectrum, House of Ashes will be moving away from the fixed camera angles of Supermassive's previous titles, in favour of a fully controllable 3D camera. I will be the first to admit that the fixed camera angles in previous Supermassive games were sometimes a little wonky and made the game play a little awkwardly, and this change will likely improve the game for many players, but it's also one extra aspect of the game for players to manage. If you found previous Supermassive games easier to control because you didn't have to manage controlling camera angles, this may be an additional challenge for you. While overall I'm feeling pretty positive about the accessibility settings available in House of Ashes, I'm a little more cautious about the game's plot. I saw about 30 minutes of presentation about this game as part of a press event, and considering that Salim Othman, the Iraqi soldier who is one of the 5 playable characters in this game, he basically got 0 time during this 30-minute presentation. It was all focused on the 4 US soldiers who make up, 80% of this game's playable characters, but all I found out about Salim was, here's a quick shot of him scared of a monster. Anyway, back to the US soldiers. Given that this game is set in 2003 Iraq, I really hope that Salim is handled well and is given proper airtime and not just used to progress the plots of the 4 US Marines, but obviously maybe that's just how the press event was presented and maybe the game itself will be different, but I'm cautiously watching on that aspect. I definitely think that the inclusion of difficulty modes in the Dark Pictures anthology going forward is a positive, so long as the ability to turn off QuickTime events entirely hasn't been removed. But I think it is important for disabled players who may struggle with camera control that they know that this game requires full 3D camera control, where previous games in the series sort of handled that for you. For better or worse, House of Ashes looks a lot like previous Dark Pictures anthology games. I'm excited to give it a play, even if right now I have reason to feel cautious about how Salim is going to be treated by the rest of the cast of US military dude bros.